Hi everybody, I'm back for my second video of the day. So this is actually being pre-recorded. It will be released on July 10th at 10 a.m. This is my tier ranking for Pride Month, and I am releasing it a couple of days before my meeting for book club on July 14th, where I will be discussing the Safe Keep. So I will be giving reviews for most of the books in this video, but I will be saving my review for the Safe Keep for the individual review I do about it after my book club meeting, because by then I will be able to work in elements of our book discussion into my review, as I have done before with Make the Season Bright back at Christmas time. So these tier ranking headings are from Carrie Can Read. So thank you, Carrie, for these tier ranking headings. The first tier ranking heading is give me 14 of these. The first book that I read for Pride Month that I would like to talk about today is Big Gay Wedding by Byron Lane. This was recommended to me by Noah at Print Bookstore when I asked him for a book recommendation for my friend's TBR that would best fit the episode, the one with the lesbian wedding, because I asked him to recommend a book for me about Carol and Susan, and I think this book definitely fits the elements of the wedding part of the episode, not like the part of the episode so much where Carol goes to talk to Ross about her parents not coming to the wedding, but this is basically telling the story of the person who is getting married, who is a lesbian, and I really liked hearing the point of view of what it's like to get married. So the two main characters in this book are Barnett. Oh, and So I really liked the hijinks in this book that were leading up to the preparations for the wedding. It's just as funny as an episode of Friends. This book not only reminds me of the one with the lesbian wedding, but it sort of reminds me of the one with the two parties where Rachel is celebrating her birthday, because just because of the aspect that in that episode Rachel's parents are getting a divorce. This episode happens a couple of months after Carol and Susan get married, because in the wedding episode with Carol and Susan, Rachel's mom announces to her that she's divorcing her dad. So the thing that makes this book similar to that episode is that Barnett keeps the wedding a secret from his mother and doesn't tell her that he's going to have the wedding on the family farm. This book was so funny. I gave it 4.5 stars on Goodreads. The next book that I wanted to talk about from my Pride Month TBR is Harriet Tubman, Live in Concert. I talked about this book in my mid-year freakout tag video, and it's by Bob the Drag Queen, who was a drag queen on RuPaul's Drag Race. So if you're a fan of RuPaul's Drag Race, I think you will really like the writing. I mean, I haven't seen RuPaul's Drag Race, but I still thought the writing style of Bob the Drag King was very funny. Basically, this reimagines Harriet Tubman as a musician and has her putting together a concert based on leading the slaves on the Underground Railroad. It was so much fun. I read this book for book club at Print Bookstore, not for Reading the Rainbow, but for the book club that I'm in with Rachel Conrad. I missed the meeting because I was busy with my play for Port Fringe, A Tincture of Time, which I'm going to diverge my discussion a little bit. So for those of you who are wondering how my play went, it went very well. Our play won an award at the award ceremony, and I was really excited that we won. This was my first time this is the first play that I was in since I have moved to Portland, and I'm very grateful to my art teacher, Amelia, for inviting me to be part of her one-act play with the Portland Fringe Festival. I am hoping to get involved with this Fringe Festival again next year, potentially, or find other acting opportunities here in Portland. So again, just like Big Gay Wedding, this book got 4.5 stars. The next two, so some of these books I do not have physically because I borrowed them from the library earlier in the month and already returned them. So the next two books I wanted to talk about are a graphic novel duology, Garlic and the Vampire and Garlic and the Witch. This graphic novel series was very cute. And they're very quick reads. They're only 140 pages each or somewhere around there. This book was recommended to me by With Cindy, as was The Magic Fish. The Magic Fish was a crossover for my Asian Readathon and Pride Month TBRs because it is a graphic novel by a Vietnamese author where the character is gay and afraid to come out to his parents, and he uses fairy tales as a way to come out to his parents, which is very intriguing and interesting. And as somebody who reads a lot of fairy tale retellings, I can tell you that I gave this graphic novel 5 stars, as well as Garlic and the Vampire and Garlic and the Witch. Garlic and the Vampire and Garlic and the Witch is basically a graphic novel set in a vegetable garden. Our main character is a clove of garlic who goes on an adventure and meets a human witch who is a lesbian. It's a very sweet story. I really enjoyed it. The next book I would like to talk about today is Loveless by Alice Oseman. This is a standalone book about a character who is asexual, written by the same author as the Heartstopper graphic novel series. So Alice Oseman fast became my new favorite author at the end of last year when I started reading Heartstopper at the recommendation of one of my favorite booktubers, Sarah Caroli, who recently had a birthday. Happy birthday, Sarah. So besides Loveless and the Heartstopper series, and I have also read Solitaire, which focuses on the sister of Nick, the main character from Heartstopper. And I read that book for my Friends and Gilmore Girls TBR back in March or April. And this book was recommended to me on a list of book recommendations that are centered around Gilmore Girls characters. And the person who put that list together pair this book up with Paris's character, who is played by Liza Wheel on Gilmore Girls. And I think that Tori Spring, who is the sister of Nick from Heartstopper, is a perfect representation of Paris's character. And I really just love the writing style of Alice Oseman and the characters in all of her books. Loveless focuses around a character who is coming out as asexual to the rest of her friends, and it's the it's a coming of age story, and a sexual reawakening, and I just really love how the character who's going through that experience is written. The next category in this TBR is Yes Please. And the first book is a graphic novel that I read called How to Be Ace, which is similar in topic to Loveless, where we have a main character who is coming out as asexual. But instead of a teenager in high school, this graphic novel is more geared towards middle grade, because this main character is in middle school. It seems to me, by what I was gauging by the illustrations, that this character was supposed to be like 13 or 14, so between middle school and high school. So this book was really informative because there's a whole glossary in the back, and also Loveless had a glossary in the back about definitions about gender terminology and stuff like that. Another book that I read that was very informative about gender binary is What's the Tea by Juno Dawson. Juno Dawson is the same author as Her Majesty's Royal Coven and The Shadow Cabinet. I first read Her Majesty's Royal Coven in 2023 rather, and it was a DNF. Then I reread it last year at Halloween so I could finish it, and my rating changed slightly, but then I read the sequel, and the sequel was so much better because one of the witches, Leonie, she goes on a travel to the International Congress of the Witches, and one of the places she travels to on her journey is Italy, and I just loved all of the scenery in that book. I think Juno Dawson does a great job of talking about the different settings of the countries that Leonie traveled to. So I actually did not read these two books by Juno Dawson. For my Pride Month TBR this year, I read Her Majesty's Royal Coven in 2023, and then I reread it again last summer before I read the sequel. What's the Tea I gave 4 stars to, because it's more like an introduction to the gender binary, which was very informative. The next book I wanted to talk about is Luda. This was another book that Noah at Print Bookstore recommended to me. It's by Grant Morrison. This is a murder mystery that's centered around drag queen performers. And when I asked Noah which book he thought would be representative of Chandler's dad, who is played by Kathleen Turner, he recommended me this book, and I loved it. So I love the murder mystery in this book, and how Lucy, who is the main character, who is the up and coming drag queen, is the admirer of Luda, who is the drag queen who has been in the profession a long time. And I just love their dynamic in solving the murder mystery together. This book also got 4.5 stars. The next book I wanted to talk about on this... I actually skipped one book. So 2 books that I read in a series for this TBR were The Guncle and The Guncle Abroad by Stephen Rowley. So the main character in this book, his name is Patrick. He takes care of his young niece and nephew for the summer in the first book after his sister dies. And his dynamic with his niece and nephew is very sweet. The kids' names are Macy and Grant. And I reviewed this book in a video from earlier in June where I was reporting on my reading progress. And I just love Stephen Rowley's writing style. And Patrick reminded me of Cam from Modern Family because of how he was so into theater and stuff like that. And in the Guncle Abroad, Patrick is he is a theater performer who is kind of stuck in a rut in the first book. And then in this second book, the Guncle Abroad, he goes to Italy to be in a traveling acting company now that he's back into his favorite hobby of acting. And I related to this character so well because, as I just mentioned, I just finished being in a play here in Portland called The Tincture of Time that my friend Amelia directed. And mostly I am into being in musicals, so I'm hoping to get more involved in musical theater here in Portland eventually. The next book I will be reviewing in a shorter form individual video after book club on July 14th is called The Safekeep by Yi L. van der Wooden. This historical fiction novel is a female romance that is set during the Holocaust, which is a very interesting relationship dynamic, and not really a relationship dynamic I would expect to read about for this time period, because I don't really read a lot of books set in World War II that are lesbian romances, so this was fun to read, and it's interesting to see this kind of relationship dynamic set in the time period of Anne Frank, because much like in The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid, which is set in 1950s Hollywood, gay and lesbian relationships were not really as common in those time periods as they are now. Even in the 1990s, when the episode of Friends came out where Carol and Susan got married, that was dynamic for that time period. And I always talk about how that's my favorite episode of Friends, because Carol, who is played by Jane Sibbett, hi Jane if you're watching, I don't know if you are, and Susan, who is played by Jessica Hetch, I just really loved. As a teenager, not really knowing much about gay and lesbian people, because I started watching Friends originally when I was 11 to 13, and in 1996, when that episode aired with Carol and Susan's wedding, I was in 4th grade, so I was really young. I was almost 10, or I was 11. I was 11 when that episode originally aired. So watching it now, when I know a lot of people who are gay and lesbian, it was just really dynamic for that time period. And so as I just said, I read this book for Reading the Rainbow Book Club for July, and I will be giving a full review of this book and talking about what we discussed in our book discussion on the 14th after I get back from my book club meeting. This was another 4.5 star book, by the way. Another book I'm currently reading that was not originally on my Pride Month TBR, that just showed up in my mid-year freakout tag video is Taylor Jenkins Reid's new release from June 3rd, Atmosphere. This is set during the early 1980s, during the beginning of the space program. And I started this book on Wednesday, and I am currently on page 266. There are no chapter numbers in this book, so the chapter I'm currently on is called Fall 1984. And I really love the main character in this book, Joan. She has a really sweet dynamic with her niece, Frances, who is a teenager. And I love their dynamic with each other. It's very sweet. So I'm not done with this book yet, but again, I'm predicting it's going to be with the rest of these books with a 4.5 star rating. All the stars I wish I could give it, because I love all of Taylor Jenkins Reid's books. To me, I haven't really found any of her books, not even in her back catalog, because I've read a few books in her back catalog too that she wrote before she started to write these historical fictions. I read After I Do and One True Loves. Those books were 4 stars. Daisy Jones and the Six is 5 stars. This book is 4.5 stars. Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo is 4.5 stars. And Malibu Rising is 4 stars. So, she is easily in my top 3 authors, followed by Emily Henry and Abby Jimenez. The next book in this TBR is this book, Idlewild. This was my, this was the Reading the Rainbow June pick for my book club that I'm in. It's set in the 2000s, in New York City, and it's based around 2 main characters named Nell and Finn. And the male character in this book is closeted and afraid to come out as a transgender person. And what's interesting about this book that we talked about in our meeting in June earlier this month, because this video is being made on June 30th to be posted on July 10th, was that when this author was writing this book, he had not yet come out as transgender, and ever since he wrote it, he has come out as transgender. So I would be interested to see him write a follow-up book where his character comes out as transgender, because I feel like Finn's character had a very unfinished storyline, and I would love to see it be wrapped up in a sequel. I gave this book 3.5 stars. So basically, this is my lowest ranked, actually second lowest ranked book in this tier ranking. The next book in the What I Ordered tier is The Charm Offensive by Alison Cochran. This book is about, it's a male-male romance that is set on the set of a TV show that is very similar to The Bachelor, called Prince Charming, and it's basically the gay version of The Bachelor. The reason why I'm reviewing this book in July is because it ties very well into Pride Month, because the characters are a gay couple, and also Disability Pride Month, because the main characters both have disabilities, and Alison Cochran does a very good job of exploring the coping mechanisms of these disabilities. Charlie has depression, and Dev has OCD, And I selected this book for my Friends and Gilmore Girls TBR because Charlie also has anxiety, and he represents Chandler, and Dev has OCD, and he represents Monica. So I gave The Charm Offensive 4.5 stars. I have also read Alison Cochran's 2 other books earlier this year. Here We Go Again, which is a road trip romance set during the summertime where 2 girls in their 20s go on a road trip with their high school teacher who's about to die from cancer so they can bury his ashes in Maine. They're traveling across the country from like California or Oregon or someplace like that. I love the road trip atmosphere of that book and the fact that the ending of the book where they are going to bury the remains of their teacher is set in Maine. And then the other book I read by Alison Cochran is called Kiss Her Once for Me, which is a Christmas book that I read in December 2024, and I gave that book 3.5 stars. The last book I wanted to talk about on this TBR today is Most Ardently, which is in the 9th book in a series of classic books that have been remixed with gay couples. And in this book, which is a remix of Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, Oliver is the transgendered character who is in this book, and he is a friend of Elizabeth Bennet. And I just thought he was treated really unfairly because the other character kind of outs him when he doesn't feel uncomfortable coming out. And I just think that the whole plot line of the gay character is not really needed for a retelling of Pride and Prejudice. I just feel like some classic books do not need to be rewritten, and this book needed to be left alone. However, I have read a couple of other books in this series of remixed classics. I have read So Many Beginnings, which is a Black retelling of Little Women that is set during the slave times, during the same time as Harriet Tubman leads the blacks to the Underground Railroad to freedom. That book was pretty good. I gave it 4.5 stars. Then I read Teach the Torches to Burn, which is a retelling of Romeo and Juliet that is a male-male romance, which I actually enjoyed better than the actual Romeo and Juliet, which I gave 3.5 stars to. And I gave the retelling of Romeo and Juliet 4.5 stars because I really like the dynamic of the gay couple. Not to say I don't like the dynamic between Romeo and Juliet, because I do, but I just think the author of Teach the Torches to Burn did a really good job of adding an extra layer to the tension of Romeo and Juliet by making Romeo have a gay love interest. And then the last book that I read in this remixed classic series was, I don't have the title in front of me, or maybe I do. Hang on. Okay, so the Wuthering Heights remix was called What Souls Are Made Of. So this was a Wuthering Heights remix that was set during the times of slavery, much like the So Many Beginnings book that was the retelling of Little Women. And I actually found Heathcliff's and Catherine's story to be much more engaging against a historical backdrop than it was in the classic book. And then I also read a modern retelling. If you have read The Favorites by Lane Fargo, that is also a modern retelling of Wuthering Heights that is set against the backdrop of competitive ice skating. So both of those retellings of Wuthering Heights get 4 stars, and I'm going to be rereading Wuthering Heights again in September, and hopefully my rating of it is going to change. So thank you for tuning in, and I hope everybody has a great day.